But, but we really felt that through a very little way, just like summer youth employment you guys are all familiar with, summer youth have been focused. America always talks about young people. Somehow this is a similar concept, but except on the other end of it. And to remove the stereotype, people think that older people are, in Southern America tend to be done with. They really don't have too much to contribute. They're relatively dependent on either the family or public support, but not seeing that they're diamond in the rough. So many things that you can really identify once you give a little investment to polish it.
Great. Let's finish with both of the elders, and then we'll take questions.
I know he said one. I have a short one and a real
Could you pull
short
the
one.
mic closer?
Yes. As I said, I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, and our project is really bringing the older worker engaged. We talk about civic engagement. We have older workers who are involved in this program. Specifically, in one of our agencies, we are just teaching them the basics. Now, everybody has an email address, right? Everybody has an email address. Well, these individuals don't even have an email address, don't even know what an email is, didn't even know what a computer was and a mouse. So through our training, we are teaching them about the computer and about the mouse. And one of the participants, this is what they said. One student were actually afraid to touch the mouse and are now crossing the digital divide with glee. One reluctant student who learned how to get a free email address, they didn't even know that was free. So this is just cutting edge for them to apply for and be able to correspond with potential employers, said, and I state, now I feel like I'm part of today's world. I am somebody. I have an email address. Just a small email address has been something for just an older worker who's low income to just know what that is. So we're excited about that. And I have another little short one. We have a food bank that distributes food to more than 10,000 individuals in the community who are low income, to some agencies as well. And we have a person who works there, older worker who works there, and we talk about civic engagement. And thanks to this training, participants are seeing how their civic engagement training assignments serve their greater community. I quote, I used to think that I just stocked shelves at a food pantry. Now I know I have an important role to play in helping my agency feed the hungry in my community. If I don't stock the shelves properly and quickly, then we can't fill the orders efficiently. Even my job is important in the agency's mission.
Like everybody else, we have a significant number of seniors actually on our payroll as employees. We run a transportation system, which is basically a door-to-door accessible, handicap accessible system that goes across the counties and transports people to and from medical facilities, doctors, pharmacies, things of that nature. We probably run 120,000 trips a year. We have approximately 25 vehicles. We actually have recruited many of the participants over the last year to those positions now. They're part of a collective bargaining agreement with the Teamsters. They're 20 of the 25 drivers, 18 of them are over the age of 55. Probably another 13 of those are over the age of 60. We have found they're excellent employees. They're very timely. They're very committed. They're very nurturing of the other seniors or other disadvantaged populations that they're actually transporting. They're fabulous employees. They actually care, and we aggressively try to recruit them. And these are individuals that started through the program, and we've targeted them to actually become employees of the agency.
Right. Ruth, you had a question?
Yeah, I was curious, what's the oldest age? Do you have any limits? And how many people do you have who are over 80?
Not over 80, but we have several in the mid-70s.
Yes.
But there's no rule that says they can't work?
No, as long as they can maintain their CDL commercial driver's license. And their
Okay, but
physical
outside of driving and other work?
As long as they are able to go to work and be productive at the work site, then they can work to 99.
And the gentleman from New York?
I want to add that actually it's interesting that the CSEP is not just work, it's also community experience. We had a couple over 80s. They're no longer in the program, but they kept coming back.
Yes.
Because they identify with us so much that I was surprised too. I thought we have 2-year term. It can't be more than 2 years. How come you see them all the time? And I asked my staff, find out that, well, after they expire the maximum, but somehow they're not placed yet, but they still come back. They come back to do the volunteer type of work.
Well, I haven't read all the material, and so please, I'm sorry, educate me. These people are paid, but they can only come for 2 years? And then what do they do?
Yeah, the program went through a slight revision in the last reauthorization of the Older Americans Act in 2006. First of all, to be eligible, there is no upper age limit, to answer your question directly. You have to be at least 55, and you have to have a family income that's less than 125% of the federal poverty guidelines. And you have to be legally, you have the legal right to work in this country. Those are the only requirements. Now, in terms of a time limit, for the first time in the history of the program, which first started back in, again, over 40 years ago, there is a maximum time limit, and it's hard to explain simply other than that there are exceptions that one can meet. If you are older, you can stay longer than, I believe, Marta, is it 4 years?
4 years.
Yeah. The average length of time that a participant stays in the program now nationally is just over 2 years.
And then they go off and get a job on their own, is that your purpose?
That's correct, either they get a job unsubsidized by the grants, or they do other things. Some move on to be participants in senior corps programs as foster grandparents or senior companions, or they end up volunteering in the community organizations that they got.
Volunteering for pay?
No, volunteering, period.
Because there's a new trend to volunteering for pay.
Right, well, that's one of the interesting discussions with civic engagement, trying to figure how do we handle this language about whether volunteers can be called volunteers and stipended, et cetera.
Actually, it's interesting that exactly that we do have people who are very able, right? But then they need to be placed, but somehow not placed yet, they come to volunteer. But our participation in this component is actually to identify those who are still hard to be placed, but yet they're very able. So in essence, we're trying to enhance that. A lot of times from the social perspective, they may be isolated in certain sense, the language part, the literacy part, intimidating computer part. If we give them more social support, these harder to place elder with ability can yet still get a chance to get a placement compared to the 60-year-old or the 65, 78 years old. But we know through the volunteer experience, they're still as vibrant as others, but somehow there are a lot of barriers. So give them the support, they feel a lot more confident. A lot of time when you interview, if you start off by thinking you can't do much, it's very hard. Just I mentioned before the diamond in the rough situation, right? If the person see himself know English, nobody knows that he has such a rich background. Until you get into it, then you find out that, wow, gee, language is only a barrier, but it wasn't the substance that he had. So in some way, this is what we're trying to wrap this around in that kind of it's not really innovative, we've been doing it all the time, but just that we need to focus it to a particular subgroup and hope that we'll make it more employable, for them in some way.
I just want to add one other thing to just give a little bit more education about it. We partner with local host agencies, and we call those individuals nonprofit agencies or governmental agencies. And their job in the partnership, and I think Marta mentioned a triple win, is where that we partner with them, and they are actually doing the job training for us, preparing the older workers so that they can obtain meaningful employment and be able to get a job. Yes, it's the responsibility of the host agencies, which is a nonprofit agency or a governmental agency, and those are the agencies that we partner with.
Okay, great. Nancy, you had a question?
I wanted to ask each of the grantees if you have waiting lists to get into the program and waiting lists for people to get placed, and if so, how long?
I'll take a shot. Yeah, there is a waiting list. Physically, the numbers, I'm not actually aware. If you give me a card, I'd be more than glad to get you the numbers. We run a 3-county operation. Each county is probably a little bit different depending upon the length and numbers of individuals that are participating. So at any point in time, we'll have, I think there's 80 kids, or 80 seniors in the program at any point in time. And they could be transitioning on and off the system contingent upon maybe getting hired from that host nonprofit agency.